Welcome to Nursion Care's The Terminator Talk. I'm Parrot named Mike, and I have here my lovely wife, Jane.
Hello.
We decided that we wanted to do The Terminator Talk for a few reasons. One, we will regularly watch Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, Terminator, the Terminator series being our favorite, Terminator 2 being our favorite. It's how we met. Of course, there is all the new exciting information on the newer movie. So what I would like to do is open up to you, Jane. If you want to just start, just so we can get everybody in the mood, you could
Sure.
you could tell the story of how we met.
So we met by accident. We had a mutual friend, and we were chatting on AOL Instant Messenger, also known as AIM. And I was having a conversation with this person who was also Mike's friend. And I didn't know this, but everything that I was saying, he was copying and pasting to Parrot named Mike. And all of a sudden, I get a message from Parrot named Mike, I guess because my screen name was there. So he just decided to contact me out of nowhere. I've never met this person in my life, never seen him before, never heard of him till this moment. And he wants me to play a practical joke on our mutual friend. His name is Greg. I'll refer to him as Greg. And I said to Greg, why does this person have my information? He told me what happened. He confessed. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to make the best of this, and I'm going to talk to this person. Obviously he's interested in me, so I'm going to talk. And I started to talk, and I, it was just random stuff. Hey, how you doing? How old are you? What's going on? And I didn't hear a thing. It was just dead silence. And I came to find out later that he was playing Unreal Tournament, and he didn't even know that I was female. He thought I was a male. So maybe that's why he didn't want to talk to me. He doesn't need another male friend, I guess. So I decided to ask him something out of the blue that would really get his attention. So I said, do you like Terminator 2? And not even 2 seconds later, he says, yes, I love Terminator 2. And from there, we just started chatting, and he found out that I was a girl, which made it even better. And I guess the rest is history.
Here we are, 16 years later.
Yeah, we love this movie. There's just something about it. I mean, we love all of the Terminator movies simply because it's Terminator. But T2 is really special for us. Wouldn't you say it's the most special?
It's the
magic.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
It's my favorite too.
I guess it's the one of our generation. The other one was 1984.
Right.
So before we were born. And then the ones after were just not as good as Terminator 2. Yeah, T2, it makes sense. It makes sense. And of course it changed the computer graphics, and it did so many different things at that time. Right? You had Terminator 2, you had Jurassic Park, you had a few movies that had that wow factor. The blockbusters, as you just tried to help me here find the word.
Yeah, the term is blockbuster.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. So how did Terminator start for you?
Well, I actually saw T2 before I saw the Terminator.
Common.
I believe it was just because that was the first one that my parents rented, and they brought it home to me. I didn't see it in theater, obviously, I was too young. But I saw T2, but I didn't seem to mind that because I feel like T2 is a very good standalone movie. And later I did go back and watch the Terminator to get the backstory. But I don't think you need it completely for the movie to make sense to you. It does fill in a lot of the blanks, but it is such a good movie on its own. What do you think?
I think it's comparable to Black Panther. For an easy comparison, if you watch Black Panther and you've never seen the other MCU movies, you'll still like Black Panther. I mean, in my opinion, you'll still like it. What do you think? You agree with that statement about Black Panther?
I do actually.
Isn't Terminator 2 like that? If you watch the movies surrounding it, well, really, if you watch the first one, and then hopefully this next one that'll eventually come out in November, it'll enhance the second movie. So if you watched Iron Man and the Avengers and all of that, it enhances Black Panther, but it's certainly not needed at all. It creates its own world within the confines of the 2.5-hour runtime.
And there are not a lot of examples of a sequel being better, I feel, than the first. And this is always the one that everybody brings up, I feel. You always hear that. Well, T2 breaks the rules, right? Haven't you heard that?
James Cameron breaks the rules because Aliens was James Cameron. And for me, it's better than Alien.
Yeah, this is just a little tangent here, but do you think that Home Alone 2 is better than the first Home Alone?
I think that Home Alone 2 is more watchable for me personally than the first one.
And I think you could compare it a little bit to T2 because it is a good movie on its own. You don't need the first one, do you think?
Well, they did the whole backstory in that one. We did it again.
Right.
So
you don't need very much to go on. You assume that something happened prior and this is happening again.
Before we go on any further on the tangent, can I say what you always say when we watch that?
Sure.
If there was a such thing as cell phones, this movie wouldn't have existed.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah, it is true. So Terminator 2 first. When did you see Terminator 1?
Terminator 1 I saw like 5 years later, honestly. I saw it probably, I want to say... I don't think I even saw...
Was it like a novelty? Or you just said, why the hell haven't I seen that other one? Let me just give it a try.
So I think it was 5 or maybe even 6 years later. I'm sure that I was old enough to ask to rent it because my parents I never remember my parents talking about the Terminator. I don't think they saw it, and if they did, they didn't like it. The talk in the house was, oh, T2 is the good one. This is the one that's better. So this is the one that we're going to watch. I never really remember my parents speaking about the Terminator. So I never had the inspiration to watch it, but I loved it so much. I wanted more of it. So I did eventually go back. I wanted to watch it to see what's the issue? Why isn't it as special as T2? And I did go back and I did love it. The only thing that I will say, it was difficult for me to see Arnold now as the villain because in T2 he is not the villain. So it was hard for me to, I guess I experienced it backwards. The rest of the audience saw him as a villain, and then in the second one he redeems himself. I mean, obviously he's reprogrammed. He's a new model, and like Sarah Connor, it's difficult for the audience to trust him. He almost has to win everybody over that he really is here just to protect John Connor. But I guess I did it in the reverse. So it was kind of hard for me to believe, like, is he really bad? Even though I saw him murdering people one after the other. I don't know. It was hard for me to, because I still held on to the love that I had for him from T2. That was the only issue that I had, the tension, I guess you could say. And it was very shocking to go in reverse with Sarah Connor because she's such a badass in T2, and now you're going back to the Terminator. She's a waitress, she has a roommate, she's so innocent, she's very feminine, she wears a dress for most of the time, or maybe it was a uniform. It was the waitress uniform. But she's just, she's such an innocent, it's pink, right? And she has the long hair, and she's falling in love with this guy, and she, her whole world is turned upside down. So it was hard for me to go and see how she was. But I guess if I had experienced it in the sequential, the way that it was supposed to go, I would have enjoyed the transition more because, like, this is what she turned into. She had to really train and become who she is now. So maybe I would have enjoyed it better that way. But yeah.
For me, I had seen the first one first.
Oh, okay.
We're the same age, but my parents were less VHS renters, and they were more watch what's on TV kid people. So what was on TV was Terminator 1. And that was at a time in the world where, I guess maybe it's still true, but we don't really have TV. We've cut the cord. So that was at a time in a world where when a movie was coming out like Terminator 2, they would replay the first one over and over and over and over.
Right.
So,
to get you in the mood. Or a movie that featured the actor.
Right.
So you would see, yeah.
Right, like it would
TBS would have it.
Exactly. You would see Terminator, then Predator, then Commando, then Terminator, then Predator, then Commando, and then you'd walk out of your house going, God, I want to see another Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Right. Subliminal marketing.
And it worked.
It did.
Because I remember the only thing I wanted to do in life was see Terminator 2. We were 7, 8 years old. I think that's what it is. We were almost 8 years old. And again, so I saw the first Terminator. I loved the first Terminator. There's few times for me in a late 80s and 90s kid's life where you walk around imitating the bad guy in a movie.
Right.
And this movie, Terminator 1, was one of those movies. The two movies for me. I mean, I never wanted to be Lex Luthor from the Christopher Reeve Superman. I only wanted to be Christopher Reeves. I didn't want to be Zod. I wanted to be Jack Nicholson Joker from Batman, and I wanted to be the Terminator. Even though I understood he was killing people, he was doing the wrong thing. But his coolness factor was just so high up on those scales that I still wanted to be the Terminator. And I understood that the new movie, he was going to be the good guy, because that was supposed to be an unknown at the time. And then they released the commercial where he says, I swear I will not kill anybody. And that was really like, it threw people for a loop. There was no internet to give you this full synopsis and the full review and all of that. So I loved Terminator 1, loved it. And then eventually it came on TV and I saw Terminator 2, and that really blew me out of the water. And I saw it sequentially. I can imagine, though, what it must have been like for you. Because, when as an adult now, when I go back and I watch the first one, it feels like I'm looking at old family albums. Right? Like when Sarah Connor, there is, of course, that element of she does hold, her picture gets taken in the first movie, and in the second movie, he has that picture.
Right.
John Connor has that picture. That's the picture of her. Of course, that's a little more obvious and literal, but it does feel like a photo album where you look at a picture of your father from years and years ago and you go, oh my God, like he had an afro. Like when my father had, that was how he wore his hair. So you look at Sarah Connor and you go, she was laughing and giggling and she was a waitress and she was taking orders. And then she becomes this person who's going to shoot Miles Bennett Dyson in front of his family.
Right.
So it's strange to go back.
Can we just talk about TBS for 1 second? Can we
Yeah.
go off on a quick tangent?
Yeah,
Because we were talking about it. Isn't it so satisfying to watch a movie on a network like TBS? To tune in sometimes, halfway through or even a quarter in, rather than going downstairs and getting the DVD and putting it in the machine. Because you're never going to think to yourself, oh, I'm going to watch. I mean, do you really say I'm going to go downstairs and get Top Gun? No, but if it's on TBS, you're going to watch it. It's something about not knowing you're going to watch it. Like they've made the selection for you. And now you have no choice but to watch what's on TV. Like there's just something so satisfying about that. What is it about it? And it's terrible to watch it because of all the commercials, and they cut out a lot. I mean, I feel bad for the person who's watching this for the first time because you're probably missing so much information because they have to cut out so much. It is a family-friendly network, but there's something about it. Is it just the nostalgia for us, or it's just the fact that it's on and we have to watch it, and I'm so in the mood for this?
I always thought that, the kids are crying. This is happening. One of the kids is in the bathroom. He's going to need help when he gets done, The other kid is running to, steal a yogurt out of the refrigerator. And you have 3.5 seconds before the world starts to crash back into you like a tidal wave. And in those 3.5 seconds, you manage to get the TV on, and, and the TBS is on, and it's playing a movie that it's playing Terminator, and you go, God, what a great... And in that second, you're back in it. TBS has brought you back in it. And I agree. You would never say to me, hey, Mike, go in the basement and get Terminator 1 on the Blu-ray and go plug it. Like, you wouldn't say that.
Right.
But as you put it, someone has selected this film for us.
Right.
They've taken the stress of choice out of it.
Right. It's just a nice surprise.
Yeah, and it's fun. And you know that there are other people in the world to watch. You know that there's a chance that tomorrow, on your way to work in the morning, you're going to be driving next to somebody who may have watched it with you.
Yeah.
That's cool,
I
too.
wouldn't doubt it. You got me thinking about TBS. Sorry for the tangent.
What about the Channel 11 Sunday afternoon, or the WPIX, whatever, people who listen, it may not have been Channel 11, but that Sunday afternoon movie.
Right. I remember that very well.
They always, do you remember they would always play Short Circuit, Batteries Not Included, Predator, Terminator? How did they play R-rated movies?
Actually, I remember more Harrison Ford type movies like Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger and all those.
I remember those too.
Those were always playing on a Sunday, and then later on I remember Air Force One, they would play a lot of his movies actually.
The first time I saw Star Wars
was on TBS? You're kidding.
Was TBS.
Wow. I did not know that.
I remember. It was a rite of passage in my family to have seen Star Wars. I have a brother who's 11 years older than me, and I remember growing up watching him play with his Star Wars toys, thinking, I just didn't know, and he didn't care to tell me. So when I finally started watching it, and it was on TBS, and of course, a 2-hour movie on TBS is 3.5 hours because of the commercials.
Right.
And I got so into it. But that's how I was introduced to Star Wars, on TBS with commercials.
And do they do it as a trilogy, like all day, like a marathon?
Oh,
they
yeah.
did, right?
Oh, yeah.
I figured. Just one after the other.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Before we continue, I just want to thank our sponsor, Metamucil, for everyday digestive health. And also, if you're on a diet, you can have 2 servings of Metamucil with 8 ounces of water, and it will help keep you full while helping you stay regular. Thank you, Metamucil, and remember, a little Metamucil on the weekend helps it go by nice and smooth.
Welcome back to the Terminator Talk. We were just discussing TBS, but now we're going to move it back to Terminator. We spoke about the first one, the second one. Let's keep going in order. Let's go to T3, Rise of the Machines, which came out in 2003. Your thoughts?
I am a very big fan of the movie. I loved it when it came out. I remember hearing about it. How I am now is how I was. You've known me since I'm 19 years old, and there's no faking it. I really was a nerd through and through. I haven't just appropriated nerd culture because of a lack of identity.
No, it took a lot to make you the person that you are today.
I've been really into this stuff. I had all these Terminator toys and stuff like this. So when the announcement for Terminator 3 came out, at the time I was working at GameStop, and my manager said, "Hey, Terminator 3's they're going to make another Terminator movie, yada yada yada." I remember getting so damn excited, and my hype level was a 10. And I remember going to the theater and seeing it, the opening, everything, and I remember walking out of the theater going, God, that was as good as I hoped it would be. You had to have been 18 years old to have liked that movie. I don't know that, if that were the movie that were coming out in November, I don't know that I would be so forgiving to it. But going back and watching it, it's not that bad. I don't mind throwing it away, but it's not that bad.
I agree with you there because of the movies that followed. They were much worse. So, I mean, again, looking back, was it really that bad considering what followed? Are we liking it only because of what came next? Maybe we judged it too harshly. But I remember being really excited. I was disappointed at the handling of the Sarah Connor story and how they kind of cut her out. They gave her leukemia, but she had a backup arsenal just in case because she knew it would still happen. It was inevitable, but I was very sad not to see her on screen. I was sad with the loss of Edward Furlong having been replaced by Nick Stahl, which I guess he's a good guy, he's a decent actor, but in this role, he didn't do it for me. I feel like he was kind of weak. Would you agree with that?
Claire Danes says to him in the movie, I'm sorry, but you're a mess. Yeah, he was a mess. I
Right.
mean, maybe he is just a superb actor, and that was the character, right? The character is this guy who
Withdrawn, drug user, just trying to get through the days, and then he meets her, and she's a very strong character. I feel like they were trying to, almost reincarnate Sarah Connor, and she did a good job. I think Claire Danes did a pretty good job. I liked her in it.
I strongly agree. I think Claire Danes was outstanding, and I think when I think back of her in that role, it's only fond memories.
Yeah. And the overall tone of the movie felt different, of course, because the director was missing also, James Cameron. So that was another loss that we felt, right?
It was a void. It felt more like a comedy. There was a lot more humor in the movie.
Yeah, you definitely saw that. There were a lot of jokes. Yeah, it was funny.
He puts on the Elton John glasses, remember, when he's in the strip
club.
Right.
That's right. And of course, now you have a female Terminator who is the villain, Christiana Loken. That was a nice, change up, right? And her new features now, she's able to hack other machines, and she's kind of half liquid metal, half endoskeleton, which is nice, right?
She's my favorite.
She's your favorite.
I really she was a badass. Yeah, I didn't mind her. I don't think she was doing a Robert Patrick impersonation. Maybe she was
I loved her outfit.
She was
as a woman, I loved her outfit.
She
looked
beautiful. She's beautiful. She was partly doing Robert Patrick, but she was more insidious. I know that you have your thoughts on how the T-1000 and his frustrations. I know that you have, you're not necessarily okay with how the T-1000 was behaving throughout the film. But at least with the TX, with Christiana Loken, from the beginning to the end, she had this insidious nature about her.
Right.
And it was very believable.
And it was very tamed, and it was pretty consistent throughout the movie. You never saw her getting frustrated or, getting happy that she's winning. She just pretty much kept it on an even keel. She was the same throughout the whole movie, which I would expect from a computer, right? The outcome should always be the same, unless there's the learned behavior aspect, which will also, I know you wanted to talk about that.
What do you What was the thing? You're alluding to something. Just
Yes.
go for it. Just say it. What is it that you're alluding to?
Well, I wouldn't say this is a big argument in our household, but it's definitely something I brought up, and you don't necessarily agree with me. But I happen to believe that I love his performance, don't get me wrong. I love Robert Patrick in this role. I think he was amazing and the perfect choice, and he's very scary. We were watching it a little bit before we even started this podcast just to get refreshed and get in the mood. And it really hooked me just watching him, even the first scene where he takes the clothing from the cop. I definitely sense some inconsistencies with his behavior, because it appears that as he continues to fail his mission, I just see the frustration pouring in a little bit, especially at the end when there was a scene he runs someone off the highway and the guy, some innocent bystander, comes in and says, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And he just kind of like, he's not even in the mood for him. And you could see that come through. And I was arguing that perhaps it should still be the same, this is like any other person just in my way. Yes, I'm going to kill him, but did he really have to show that frustration? Like, oh, I can't believe I still didn't get this guy. So I just, I don't know. I sense it, and it's there. Now, I will say with Arnold, he seems to be getting more human-like because he's learning from John, his tutor, and that's part of the dynamic between them two. He's becoming more human, but that's more learned, and there's a point to that. There's a reason for that. There's a reason as to why he's becoming more human. So I don't necessarily think that was one of his mission parameters, Robert Patrick, to become more human. He was simply a hitman, a hired gun to kill John Connor. So, there was no real reason for him to start learning how to be human. He's there for one reason and one reason alone. And then by the end of the movie, like I said, I sense this deterioration in the acting skills a little bit. Maybe he forgot himself for a second. I do see that. But with Arnold, I see him getting more human, but that is the point of the story. That's part of the narrative.
I don't think it's a I hear what you're saying, and you've really affected the way I think about the movie with that. But my hope is that Skynet has programmed these things to learn from humans to the point where the Terminator would learn how to become frustrated, because in order to properly be an infiltration unit, and that's exactly what the T-1000 is. It takes the form of it's a mimic machine, because it needs to infiltrate. At the end of the day, it's more of a stealth unit than the T-800. Then wouldn't Skynet have programmed it to learn human emotion so that when it kills somebody or when it does something, let's say, rough, it has a rough face on it? That way, if surveillance cameras or something like that were reviewed, nobody would say, "Hey, don't you find it strange that this thing seems a little robotic?" Right? Wouldn't it have to hide that? Wouldn't it have to look and behave human?
So I would agree with that, but for Arnold, yes, because he's there to protect John Connor. So there's going to be a lot of downtime that he's spending with him in the meantime, just being a bodyguard, right? So he has to blend in and fit in and relate to this child. But with Robert Patrick becoming more emotional and more human, that would almost minimize the stealth factor, because why should he get angrier when he's murdering people? Shouldn't he do it in a more stealth way, kind of like Hitman, where he does it in a dark corner, no emotion, and move on? You don't really want to necessarily see him getting angrier. And also, who would he learn that from? It's not as if in the movie he is learning how to effectively kill someone and what appropriate emotion to put forth while murdering the person. There's no one really to teach him that, and there's no point, there's no agenda, there's no one even to witness it. That scene that I was describing to you before on the bridge, he kills that guy, they're alone. There's no one there to influence or to show, okay, I'm blending in. It's not normal that you kill someone, so he's going to be angry. You see what I'm saying here?
You. I have thoughts on this. I just don't know. You've really got me in a corner here. I feel a little like the T-1000 right now. He should, maybe you're right in a sense, he shouldn't be.
I mean, shouldn't a hitman be very quiet and no emotion? I mean, that would be blending in better, because of his objective is different from
And of course he could
Arnold's.
just change shapes, so he wouldn't necessarily need to exude any type of behavior as he's exposing himself as a murderer.
Right, he can Alex Mack anytime he wants.
Alex Mack? Is that the Nickelodeon reference?
Of course.
That's a great
We're
reference.
all about nostalgia today.
Oh, man, that is a good reference. So, the T-1000, for me, is one of the greatest villains of film. And what you are doing is you are taking just a little bit of the magic out of it for me.
No. Look, I love this character. I think he was the best choice for the role. It would not be the same with anyone else. And I remember my father always saying, there is nobody I know that can run as fast. Maybe Tom Cruise, but run as fast on camera. He would always talk about that scene where he's running away at the mall, like in the parking lot. I mean, he is just so cool. He's so damn cool.
Can we talk about that scene for 1 second? You've just given me a good argument here. For 2 things. One, I was on the Terminator Blu-ray, there's a documentary, and they talk about the fact that John Connor's motorcycle on that, when he's like, come on, let's go, that motorcycle scene, and he pulls out, that bike, in order to do this stunt, to have him pull out of the parking lot, his bike is tethered to a truck, and the truck goes, and then the bike goes. And as soon as the door opens, the direction was as soon as the door opens for the T-1000 to come in, the guy on the truck is supposed to hit the gas pedal and go. And Robert Patrick caught them. He ran faster than the truck could accelerate.
I remember you telling me this.
Yeah,
I remember, and I couldn't believe. I mean, I can believe it.
And James Cameron said to the truck driver, listen, I've seen this guy run. And this is James Cameron's quote, he's panther fast. And the guy said, there's no way, look, I've been doing this a long time. Just when that door opens, you give me the thumbs up and I'm going to put this truck into gear and the scene will be fine. And they had to do 2 takes because Robert Patrick caught the damn truck. So he is panther fast. And now that I'm thinking about it, in regards to expediency, maybe it wasn't frustration you were seeing. Maybe it was expediency because he knew his form was deteriorating. He knew he was close to failing his mission. And maybe he decided to put it into turbo mode. And what you are seeing you may have digested it as frustration, but it was really just expediency. I mean, you remember what he said in Lean on Me, if you're going to jump off this bridge, do it expeditiously.
I remember that.
Maybe the T-1000 was just being expeditious.
Well, I will argue you back on this and say that I don't think that it was one after the other. He's getting worse and he's getting worse. That's why I use the word inconsistency, because by the end, when he's chasing them, the very last scene when they go into the construction site, he's not in a hurry. It's almost as if he knows he's won because there's nowhere for them to go. Sarah Connor is badly wounded. She's not moving fast. And there is a scene where he is pretty much coming up the stairs. Like in 30 seconds, he's going to be touching them. But he takes his time. I think he even takes a minute to look down over the stairwell just to see, is there anyone else around who's, what's the deal here? He's assessing his, environment. I think he took his time because he knew he was going to win. He's not rushing in that scene, and he could have. I mean, had he rushed, he may have won. But he's taking his time. He's walking I got this. They're done for. So that kind of proves my point, doesn't it?
No.
No?
I think 3 things are happening that you're not realizing. One, he had just reconstituted after Hasta La Vista Baby and the greatest THX surround sound audio test that has ever been created of all those shards of him falling. So he just reconstituted. He is realizing that he doesn't see everybody all at the same time. So he's looking around to see his threats. It's a threat assessment. He's still a machine. The third thing is he's checking to see the heat because that heat can destroy him as well. He needs to be careful. There's also a 4th and a 5th thing going on now that I think about it. The 4th thing being he's weak now. In the special edition, we see him that he's kind of melting a little bit, and especially with that John, it's me moment where he has to pick which one is his mother. His feet are melting into the metal grates. So when he looks over at the molten metal, I think he's having a Okay, like that's a threat assessment. And also the final thought in his head is, where the hell is the T-800? He doesn't see it anywhere. The T-800 comes out of nowhere on a carnival ride with a rocket launcher and blows him to oblivion.
So we're going to agree to disagree. But you did mention, which I really liked, the detail that James Cameron, he paid such close attention to these little details. And you pointed this out to me, actually, so I credit you here. You were the one that said that the T-1000 was showing signs of damage when I questioned it, because I really didn't realize, because at the time I had not seen the director's cut, which does contain those extra scenes that you just described. I always felt like the fight wasn't fair. Like, he was too advanced for Arnold. He didn't have that ability to become liquid metal. So he's taking all this damage. He's losing his flesh, and his machinery isn't working. He's not even moving properly. You can hear the machines moving, and Robert Patrick is just reconstituting every minute, and he's fine. There was just one scene, I believe, where you almost see like a scan of his whole face, and I guess that's him resetting. I always thought it was like a defrag, like computer defrag situation. But you pointed out that scene where he touches the pole and his feet, and again, they cut this out. You didn't see anything below his waist, I believe. You didn't see that the feet had mimicked the pole, like the caution colors of the pole, the caution tape, whatever it was, when he touched it.
It was his
hand.
And
it was his hand. So it was telling the audience he's morphing automatically at this point. He has no control over the new shapes that he's taking because he's sustained this damage. So I thought that was nice that they gave him some weakness there, because otherwise it felt like the fight wasn't fair.
It also explains why his feet were morphing into the metal grate during the scene.
But I don't think you saw that unless with the director's cut.
The thing that annoyed me about that is, in the director's cut, it looks like John needed that to know that his mother would never say, "John, help me." You always said Sarah Connor would never say, "John, help me." That should have been enough for him to know that was the T-1000. But in the movie, he looks down and he sees his feet are melting.
I feel like James Cameron knew that he didn't need that. He knew his mother so well. She would die first before putting him in a compromised situation. She would never say, "Help me." She would die like the soldier she is. She would never be that pathetic. So he kind of knew. He came up to her and he sensed that something was wrong. And that instinct, he knew that was not his mother. I don't believe you needed that. I know they cut it out for time constraints, but I'm glad they did, because I believe that he didn't.
And look, it's not a perfect movie, but it's my favorite. It's one of my favorites, but it's not perfect. Did you find that Kristanna Loken was a little more smooth with it? Was that the whole point of this?
That was the whole point. I mean, I still prefer his performance over hers overall. I think I enjoyed.
It was a better movie.
Yeah, of course it was a better movie.
It was a better writing. It was better direction.
Right.
It was.
I just felt like her robotic performance, it just seemed a little more consistent than his. There were a couple of times where he almost broke character, but then in the next scene, he's okay. He's back to his normal, cold, killer self.
He is still one of the all-time greats.
I know you wanted to talk about the reset situation with the chip. That was another, now that we're on the topic of deleted scenes. The chip, didn't you want to cover that?
Yeah, I liked. That's one of my favorite scenes. Is a deleted scene, because it shows they go to reset the chip. The Terminator has to start to learn to be like humans. One of John's primary things in the movie is you can't just go around killing people, right? Like there's a value to human life, and in order to teach the Terminator, and that's ultimately the moral of the movie, is that if a machine can learn the value of human life, maybe humans can too. And in order for him to learn, because when Skynet sends them out on a mission, they're read-only, like every Excel sheet you get in an email, and you have to turn off read-only. The way to do that is they open up his head, and they pull the chip out to reset it, and when they plug the chip back in, boom, he's read and write, and he can learn. And in that scene, Sarah Connor, who you always love saying that she just didn't trust this damn thing throughout almost the whole movie.
Well, could you blame her, given the first movie and their prior history? She still sees him in that other role that I was talking about, the villainous role. And now she has to accept that he is there now to protect John Connor.
She wasn't ready to accept it, because in this scene, she puts the chip on the table and she's about to hit it with a hammer. And that's the moment, that's John's breakout moment where he yells at her and he says, if I'm supposed to be this great military leader, maybe you should start listening to my leadership ideas. And she hulks out the hammer right next to the chip, but she leaves it. So, and then there's that parallel with that scene in the Terminator 3 scene with desire is irrelevant, I am a machine.
Where he shuts himself down. His antivirus program realized that he was being hacked, and he was programmed, I guess, he has a defense system, and he shut himself down. So he just starts to hit the car, I think, instead of...
That is one of my favorite scenes, and that's a deleted scene. So
yeah, but they put the chip back, and then he notices. He convinces his mother that we need him, right? And she doesn't trust any Terminator, but she's going to trust her son, who will be the future leader of the resistance down the line. So she does go along with him. They put it back in, and I believe Arnold notices that there is a time stamp, that it took a little longer. It should have only taken a few seconds to take that out and reset him, put him in the edit mode, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. He asks, is there a problem? And they said, no problem.
No problem. And then next scene, and it goes back to what the theatrical
Yeah, that was
scene.
A nice touch. Things like that, the details that he...
In that scene, they used Linda Hamilton's twin, because in the deleted scene, Sarah Connor has to cut open the Terminator to reveal the shock temping that she unscrews where, like, this part of the skull where the chip is. And in order for her to do that, the Terminator is looking in a mirror, and you see Sarah Connor in the mirror doing the cutout of his skull, and he's saying, cut 3 inches to the left and do all this. And the way that they had to film that was they had her twin on the other end mimicking her movements, because they couldn't actually have the actress cutting into Arnold, and they had to have him in the reflection. So the reflection, what you see, is actually Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then the back of the head that you see is the doll, the Stan Winston animatronic that she's actually cutting deep into. And did you know Linda Hamilton had a twin?
I did, actually. I did know that.
So,
did you know that they were married? Linda Hamilton and James Cameron. At that time, they were married.
I knew that. And he also married the woman from The Hurt Locker, the director of that movie.
Oh, well, there was another marriage in between, I know. The Titanic actress.
Yeah, who was it?
The granddaughter in Titanic, he was married to.
So whatever movie he's working on, he marries the female from...
All right, you know what? TMZ over here.
So yeah,
back to the end scene, though, because this kind of ties into that she doesn't trust Terminators, and she wants to kill all Terminators, even if this one appears to be on their side. Can't trust a Terminator. They're good for nothing. But by the end, given their last exchange, that they had that nice embrace, that nice handshake between them, he almost felt like he earned her trust and her respect.
Do you think, when he says, I now know why you cried to John, do you think he was doing that because as a machine he understood that this child needed closure? Or did he really learn the value of human life? And maybe he didn't feel remorse that he was about to lower himself into the steel. But he understood that there was something beyond the mission itself. And understanding that there is something more than the mission makes him a little human. So what was it? Was it that John needed closure? And just like he's an expert in physical anatomy, he's also Skynet. It also programs them to be as expert as they can in emotional health. And he has to give John that closure.
I think it's both, and I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that the Terminator knew his limitations. He understood. He came as far as he could, as far as learning how to become human, but something in his machinery told him, this is something I can't go beyond this, but I understand why you're emotional right now, why you're sad. I have obviously created a bond with you, so therefore I have to give you a proper send-off, a proper goodbye. And you need this to live your best life, and I'm going to give that to you. And I think he did learn the value of human life. That's the whole point of the movie. That's her last monologue. That's what she said. She says that machines were man-made and they were created by us to kill, and they took over because that was their primary objective, their mission. But they don't kill for sport. Terminators don't kill for sport. Humans do. So in a way that separates us, and in a way the machines are better.
She says
They're more moral. It's very ironic. And she says that in the No Fate sequence where she's reflecting about, for all the would-be dads that this kid could have had, this machine was the only one that measured up because it didn't have the human frailty. It didn't have the ability to hurt this child because it didn't have feelings, it didn't have desire to leave or drink or do anything stupid and hurt him. The only thing that it was there for was to protect him. So in a way, it was the perfect father. So it's just interesting that the machine could be a better dad than a normal dad who can show it love, who is a human also.
So that was a powerful scene. And then after she gives that monologue, she goes to kill a man.
Yeah, it's pretty.
That's the juxtaposition
pretty
of Terminator.
Hardcore.
That's why Terminator 2 is so hard. Sarah Connor becomes as evil, or more evil, given your explanation, more evil than the T-1000.
I think that ultimately she was just trying to prevent
The apocalypse.
The apocalypse, and what's one life? She has to stop that from happening. Really, a good question that we should ask is: had Edward Furlong, her son, not showed up at that moment, do you think she would have gone through with it?
Yeah.
You really do?
Oh my God, yeah.
No hesitation.
She was hesitating.
She hesitated when she saw his child.
Was she going to do it? I have never allowed myself to go that deep.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to... I fear that the answer is she would have explained, I'm sorry, I don't want to have to kill you. It's not me, but
She didn't seem like she was there to explain.
Well, she did... She did like kind of...
It's all your fault.
Yeah, she started to...
She got upset.
She got upset. She started to turn back.
It.
There were no scenes like that in Terminator 3.
That's right.
That's some of what Terminator 3 was missing. And I mean, we're just not going to talk about the one with Batman.
Bale.
Yeah, Christian Bale and the other one with Khaleesi.
Well, we were very excited about Terminator Salvation because that was the first Terminator that you and I were going to see together in a movie. That was 2009. And we were still coming off the fresh hype of celebrating the lovely work of Christian Bale, which I know you will not admit. I'm going to bring this up till the day we die, but you will not admit that you did enjoy Batman Begins when it came out. You're giving me the look right now like you want to kill me, but it's true. You have to own it.
I was happy to see the Batman movie. I knew it would help the comic books. I knew it would help DC. I knew we'd get Batman toys back in the shelves. This was at a time where toy stores were closed. I mean, unfortunately, we live in a world where Toys R Us has gone out of business. But this was at a time where toy stores were closing, and I knew this would put toys back on the shelves.
Yeah.
And it was exciting to see Batman in the movies again because Joel Schumacher with Batman and Robin almost killed it. I mean, literally killed the franchise. So I was excited. You can't go back and watch Batman Begins and say this is a wonderful and fantastic movie. It's a little dry.
Yeah, but we liked him. We liked Christian Bale. We thought he was a good choice at the time to play John Connor. But the only thing I remember from that era was his Russell Crowe moment where he yelled at a stagehand for ruining the moment. He was trying to get into the whole war emotion thing, and this guy just walks right in and changes out a light bulb, and he just started screaming at him, "What are you doing here? I'm trying to get into character." You know, he cursed at him. So that's really all I remember from that movie. I think Arnold had a cameo in it, but it was very disappointing. It didn't even look like him. It was really bad CG.
It was the
Not
Terminator.
impressive.
It was the Terminator 1 Arnold, and he comes out of... John Connor has this battle in the facility where they're manufacturing the Terminators. And, of course, they're manufacturing...
Oh, he's right off the assembly line, and there are many of him or something, right?
Yeah.
So I don't even remember it too well. It didn't stay with me. And in between, we missed something. We missed in 2008, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. That show that came out, I think it only survived one season. Didn't even make it to season 2.
Maybe.
Right?
I don't know.
With Lena Headey. She was Sarah Connor.
We love Lena Headey.
I love her, and I know why they chose her. They chose her because of how good she was in 300. Very strong female character. But I feel like they really wrote the character all wrong.
You said, what is she doing wearing a skirt and lipstick? But Sarah Connor just wouldn't do that. I mean...
Yeah, so I think what the producers were trying to say is now, because this is supposed to take place after Judgment happened, and now they're trying to reestablish some kind of normal life. I think John Connor's going to high school. I don't even know why he still has a female Terminator who is his bodyguard, who he takes to high school.
He doesn't even.
It doesn't
know
even
at
really
first.
make sense. He doesn't even know she is a Terminator, but the mother does, but Sarah Connor does, and they're keeping it something like that. Anyway. I understand why they were dressing her more casually, because she could take a minute and relax. But the writing was really no good. I can't even remember the last episode. And I remember being so excited that they were making a show that was just centered on Sarah Connor, who is one of my all-time favorite female characters, heroes.
She's mine also.
I still remember the hot toy that we didn't get, the Sideshow collectibles from Fourth World Comics. We should have got it then.
We didn't have the money.
$75 was a lot of money for us back then. Not that it's not in today's standards, but again, $75 meant the difference between eating and going to the laundromat and having this toy. I mean, obviously, we're gonna eat.
But we didn't. I didn't. It's not like I didn't even have credit cards back then, and I didn't have $75 in the account. It just would have got declined.
But that was a really cool toy. And I don't even collect toys. That toy was so realistic. It had the glasses, the sand guard. It was really cool.
It was awesome.
And I still think about that today. And now,
I remember standing in Fourth World with you. And
every time we go, we would see it and we wanted it. And then one day it just wasn't there. He sold it. And now it's going for like 500 plus on eBay.
Yeah,
I don't even know if you can get it.
Yeah, it hurts. And it's not one of those. And
the one that got away.
It is. It's the one that got away. And now at its current price point, we can't afford it again.
That's true.
So,
we'll never have it. Maybe it's not meant to be.
It's not. Yeah, that's okay. We always, at least we have the movies.
Yeah.
That's the key.
And then the Khaleesi one, Genesis.
Some amazing action scenes. If you watch them, really cool action scenes. I'm telling you, they're really good action scenes. In the first scene, you get another Terminator 1984 versus Old Man Terminator. It's just cool. It's cool to watch. It would have worked probably better as a video game or something like that,
right,
where you didn't have to have the hopes and dreams of the Terminator franchise on your back. You could have just had the fun you wanted with the graphics. I mean, it's really cool to look at. But the story is really, really bad. And
it's kind of an alternate reality, that movie, because she is young, but she has him as her bodyguard. And they meet, she meets Kyle Reese, but then he goes back, his younger self. Bit of a stretch. It was a little too far-fetched for me. I liked the alternate reality aspect, but it was just too far-reaching for me. I couldn't get into it. What I don't want to happen is that the new one coming out, Dark Fate, I hope that it's not so bad that we look back and say, you know what? Genesis wasn't so bad.
It can't.
Because that would really break my heart. Just the simple fact that James Cameron has anything to do with this film gives me a lot of hope. Linda Hamilton refused to come back on any future, the ones that followed the T2 projects relating to Terminator. She refused unless he was involved. And there was no material that was presented to her that was worthy of her coming back. But apparently this one is, because she will be in this movie. I don't know how much of the story is centered on her. I know Edward Furlong is supposed to be in the movie. I don't know how much. You're saying something like, what if he just has...
He's
like a last scene, like, come inside and we're going to help you. And that's all you see of him. I hope it's not that.
I think it's going to be, this is going to be the start of a trilogy, and he's going to be Luke Skywalker in The Force Awakens, where in the last 20 seconds of the movie, he's holding probably a Terminator hand, because in Terminator 2, the human hand played such an important role for what it meant to be human and truth. So, like when they go to Cyberdyne, they have to destroy all the evidence of everything. And Miles Bennett Dyson, they do the 1, 2, 3, they open it up, and they pull out the hand, and Sarah Connor goes, "What's this?" And he goes, "Oh, it must have been from the first one, the one that she goes, sons of bitches," right? Like they locked her up. They called her crazy. Right. They took her kid away from her. They
covered up the whole thing.
They covered up the whole thing, and this guy is making these.
All of his work and his research is based off of this discovery
from the one she destroyed, and like. Oh my God, it's an X-Files moment. That's the best way to describe it. It's the ultimate,
Like purity control.
Yeah, it's the purity control when Scully breaks into the thing and finally gets the alien DNA. That's the purity control. It's that moment. Conspiracy was real. You're not paranoid if they're really after you.
The injustice. We should also talk about favorite scenes, no?
My favorite Sarah Connor scene is when she gets the hand. My favorite Arnold scene.
It's really hard to pick.
It's hard to pick.
So favorite Sarah Connor scene was probably the last standoff between her and the T-1000, where she needed one more bullet to put this guy away. That was the ultimate badassery. I mean, I will rewatch that scene over and over and over again. That makes me fall in love with her every time when you see that. I mean, she really almost didn't need Arnold to come and save her. I'm glad he did, but she's
not a damsel.
No, she is not. She is not a damsel in distress. I loved her. I also it's a close second. I loved her escape scene with Pescadero. That whole sequence was great. Again, you almost didn't need them to come and rescue her because she heard all that she needed. They were telling her that he's back and she knows that her son is in danger. She's got to break out of this place. She gets the paperclip. She gets out. She beats the hell out of these two guys. She puts them in the closet, gets the nightstick, goes after her psychiatrist, uses him as a hostage, is going to pump him with the poison, the rat poison, whatever. She almost got out of there on her own. I mean, I'm glad, again, they showed up to help, but she takes it as far as she can go without needing any help. So it's nice to see that. She's such a strong character.
She's amazing. Amazing.
She has the PTSD of a soldier. There's that scene where she's eating a hamburger. They pull over for a second. They're on their way to Mexico to hide and to get the weapons that she has and meet up with her friends. And she's eating a hamburger, I think, in the car. And John is trying to talk to her
and offer her fries,
and she just has that war stare.
The 1,000-yard stare.
She's on lockdown. To quote Brave One, she's on lockdown.
That's another great movie.
Yeah.
What the actress in Brave One? What's her name?
Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster is as good as of an actress in that. The Brave One was like a Sarah Connor. That's what the Sarah Connor Chronicle should have been. It should have been Sarah Connor being the Punisher.
That was actually like the Terminator and T2 in one, because you didn't need two movies to see her transition. She goes through this horrible tragedy. And then she's Sarah Connor. In the beginning, she's normal. Now she's Sarah Connor.
Yeah,
in one film, they accomplished.
In the Brave One,
she's another person.
That's a great film.
That was good.
My favorite T-1000s. You know what? Any time where he's on screen and you hear,
like the Jaws theme, letting you know he's enduring. That's his theme.
Yeah, I loved them. The themes were so good. It wasn't like pornographic in the sense that you needed the music to elicit that feeling.
Right.
It was a nice little addition. The scenes would have been just as good without it, but the music is obviously the icing. You know, today they rely on music to do everything, like in Suicide Squad or Umbrella Academies.
Yeah, I always say this, the sequence, the fight scene between the T-1000 and the T-800, where they're in the construction site and they're banging each other up, and you hear the realistic sounds that you would hear, the pipes and, banging clangs and, almost like the Bond noises, like GoldenEye, like the ping of the submarine, I can't even do it.
Yeah, the sonar ping.
The sonar ping.
Yeah.
And it's just so realistic. And the only thing that you really need is the occasional violin string to just put back the tension. And you don't need that Matrix fight music. I feel like if they had done it today, they would have ruined it with something like that. You don't need that. It's a realistic scene. You're really there. You feel the tension. And like I said, the music is just a backdrop, almost like you were saying. And even the soundtrack is good. The actual lyrical songs are good. But they're really just to set the tone. There's no, like you said with the Umbrella Academy, there's a song every other minute to tell you how to feel. You need that. You're relying on that emotion. Whereas the song choice, like Bad to the Bone, because he puts the glasses on, and at the bar there's that Roadhouse country music, on. It just takes you there, but it's not necessarily telling the audience you have to. It's not giving you...
No, I think you said it right. It puts you in the scene, but it doesn't tell you how to feel.
Right.
Whereas...
Right. You said it even better than me.
In the more... No, it's not... But I understand what you're saying. In the more modern stuff, it has to tell you... Umbrella Academy is my favorite example of We don't know how to write it. We don't know how to shoot it. We don't have the people to properly act. But we're going to get a Queen song, guys, and it's going to be awesome.
Right.
And
so you have to feel awesome.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen on screen is going to be awesome. So this music is telling you it's going to be awesome.
there are so few character themes that I'm tone deaf, truly tone deaf, not to be cute or funny. I'm tone deaf. My wife will tell you. There are so few in my brain where I can hear the music. And I have Darth Vader. I have Tim Burton, the Danny Elfman for Tim Burton's Batman. And I have the T-1000's theme. Because that just, it sounds
so
like...
recognizable.
It's also perfect. It's to me it always felt, what would it sound like to be, what would it feel like to be a Terminator? How would the thoughts go? I mean, is it just file access, data, retrieve, is it just binary code? Or because these things are so, they're so close to humans, is there more of it because they're artificially intelligent, but there still is intelligence just because they're not organic? Isn't there more? But the sound of the T-1000, it sounds like what his head must sound like. So it feels...
That's a good point. I didn't think of it that way.
It feels organic. So when he's walking and you hear the... that's the sound he makes almost, right? Like if you were a bug in his skull, that's what you would hear as he was doing all of the stuff.
Right.
And it has this gravity. You always say it's like Jaws.
Right. It's the sound of a predator, but more machine-like. Like some kind of invader.
It has a hum to it.
Right.
It has an artificial hum to it and an insidiousness, but it's also calculated and precise. It's a spooky thing, and it's instantly recognizable, forever memorable. It's a testament again to the sound design, to everything about Terminator 2 that just does it right.
Yeah. Even the actual score produced by Brad Fidel, the theme itself, the beginning, that music is so nice. It's solemn. It has a lot of brass. It's almost like that military fallen heroes kind of vibe. You really feel the loss, kind of like the Halo theme. You feel like Hymn to the Fallen. Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah.
One of the Halo tracks. Yeah.
I can't hear it, but I know that you. If you do it though, we'll get copyright strike.
I'm not gonna sing it. Don't worry. I'll butcher it. But
I think of the sound of the metal coming down at the end, and it's the grill of the truck.
Oh, I love that scene. That's the opening scene.
Yeah, that's the opening
transition.
Scene. It's those sounds where if you're in a different room and you hear just a tiny little micron of it, you still can go, who's watching Terminator? Pause it, wait for me. Or the shotgun blast, where I can't let you take the man's wheels, son. That shotgun blast is straight out of the video game Doom. You can listen to 100 movies and all the shotgun blasts will sound the same, but the one from Terminator 2.
Oh, yeah. I love that opening scene in the bar. Again, back to the details. He does his homework. Cameron does his homework. We actually paused.
Yeah.
The scenes where he is analyzing his environment, and we actually read all of the details. He takes all of the size measurements, the weight, the height to determine.
Remember, he identified the motorcycle's 1996 or 1990 panhead, 1986 pan.
And when the smoke was blown in his face, he analyzes carbon monoxide. The levels and what's in it. It's really impressive. Things like that really, really make the movie.
And who would have seen that in the first run through? Did Cameron know we were going to watch it 1,000 times?
And obsess and look at every detail. We took every one, I think. I mean, we had a lot of time we did, at that time, have a lot of time on our hands.
We went frame by frame.
We went frame by frame just to see the different, and there were numbers on the side, like binary. Some of it's totally over our heads. I'm sure if we Googled it, it is based on some scientific something.
Right, maybe that's the file folder for that information, right? Like it's the reference number. And for all, knowing Cameron, whenever he looks at a certain thing and it identifies something, that same reference number is always going to be there. He has that attention to detail.
Right.
But it's also like what we were saying earlier, why did it take so long for you to reset me? If that scene, when they do the reset on the deleted scene, if the Terminator never said, is everything okay? Did it go smoothly? No one would have noticed. But of course the Terminator, a real world Terminator would have noticed the time lapse. Those things bring you in so deep. Also, the idea of a computer, and this is for Terminator 1 also, the idea of a computer becoming self-aware.
It's not really an original idea. It's been done before. Twilight Zone episodes in the past. There was one in particular in 1960. I don't remember the title of it. The guy starts to get paranoid that all the appliances, everything in his house is coming alive. All of them are turning on and, turning against him. And there have been movies that have followed Terminator, some bad 90s movies.
Like Pulse, is that
Ghost
one?
in the Machine. Well, the one I was thinking of was Ghost in the Machine. A serial killer somehow goes into the electricity. I don't know how it's achieved. It doesn't make any sense scientifically, but the serial killer is trapped inside and he's electrocuting people. Very silly, but iRobot, even The Matrix. I mean, the legacy that Terminator has left laid the framework for all these future movies that we enjoy.
But it was also based on
previous
I think
writings
iRobot came first. I think something regarding iRobot, the rules. I think the rules were from something else, from another novel.
Well, iRobot was after Terminator, way after.
But I think the movie that iRobot, I think
the commandments, you mean? Like,
yeah,
don't
like
kill.
a robot cannot, by action or inaction, be the cause of a death of a human.
Right.
Because even Bishop in Alien says that. He has a set of rules. Remember, James Cameron loves this idea of the strong female lead and loves this idea of an untrustworthy machine. In the first Alien movie, which was not a James Cameron movie, the android is crazy and starts to kill the crew, and he's not trustworthy. And in the second movie, there's the Terminator 2 moment in Aliens where Ripley says, nobody told me there was going to be an android or a robot on this mission. Bishop goes, oh, I heard what happened on your first mission, but we've been massively upgraded. And then he starts to give the rules, and it sounds like the iRobot rules. That has to be a thing.
Oh, I'm sure. And
but
there's a lot of similarities.
But she doesn't trust, it's just like in Terminator 2, until the end of the movie, she doesn't trust Bishop.
Right, she doesn't trust the droid.
Yeah, she doesn't trust him, and it's just like,
and they don't believe her. That theme is also there. They don't believe what happened to her. They think it's in her head, right?
She's just another crazy woman.
Right.
Because she blew up the, I forget what they call the ship, the Restrepo or something. She blew it up, and they say to Ripley, you blew up a $4 million or whatever, a $40 million ship holding cargo. And she goes, my whole crew is dead. And they're like, well, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a James Cameron thing. And James Cameron wrote it also. The director and the writer is really the key. You can even have some bad acting if you have if everything around it goes well. You can have a little weakness in the human element. Sometimes with the best actors, it won't save bad writing, which is, I think, what happened in Terminator 3. We had some really good performances, but overall the story wasn't there.
I'm excited about the new movie because the band is back together. It's just, it's probably, even if it's a terrible script, even if the hype is just, it doesn't deliver, just the fact that they're all together. That's how I felt about the new X-Files season 11.
Yeah.
The writing was not that great. I'm sure a lot of diehard X-Files fans would agree with me. The writing was not that great. And there actually was an episode where the smart tech attacks. They did an episode on that. But just to see Mulder and Scully together again on the screen, that reunion, it was enough for me, I feel.
I could watch them paint a house and be entertained.
Exactly. It doesn't matter what they're doing, just that they're together.
Before we end this, I want to give you my overall favorite scene in the franchise. The thing that represents Terminator the most to me is probably when the T-1000 and the T-800 are fighting in the steel mill. And the T-1000 kind of gets him down. He gets his arm ripped off in the gear. And the T-1000 sticks that pipe through him. And the Terminator just shuts down. He reboots and he pulls out. And the music hits and he's turning it in the way that he's turning that pipe. And he's pulling and twisting and pulling and twisting because he has to uncork it from his body. And after he does it and it drops, I don't know if it's the sound effect or if it's the music or what's going on. I always lose it in that scene, and he picks up the thing.
He throws it and you hear
the clang.
And then he reaches for the nearest gun.
Yeah.
But he's still shaking.
His arm is
shaking.
And he just, there's not a whole lot. There's no stopping him. And just the epitome of franchise and what's so compelling about the character. That in order to save John Connor, this machine, it has died and come back to life for this boy. And you think, I hope that there are people out there in the world that would do that for each other. There's so much going on in your head in that scene, and that is the epitome of the Terminator franchise for me.
Of course, I love the ending. I can't get through it. I'm sobbing. I'm a complete mess by the end of it. I mean, especially with the thumbs up. I mean, that is just like I'm crying right now thinking about it. But my overall favorite scene is probably the motorcycle chase in the beginning when the T-1000 is trying to run John Connor off the road, and he's bumping him a couple times, and then all of a sudden Arnold makes his grand entrance, and I know he has a stunt man. We've slowed it down to see the face change for the stunt man. I know it's not really him, but it's just something about that scene. Like, Daddy showed up right when he needed to. You know, he was one more time and he's down, right? I think he bumped him twice, and then all of a sudden he showed up like just in time. And he looks over and he grabs him. I think he picks him up by his backpack, and you see his bike, which is much, more flimsy than the Harley that he's driving, right? And it just crumbles under this car. And another thing, I love how the truck, the 18-wheeler that the T-1000 is driving, it didn't clear the overpass. And a nice detail was that the glass was still intact, but he figured, screw it, I don't need this, and he moved it away. He banged it off. Now he has, a more clear overview of his eventual roadkill. But I love that scene, that chase, and the building with the music, like da 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 da. I don't know, that really did it for me. It had everything. It had the action. It had almost like you felt like this protective force now is coming in, swooping in, and it's gonna save him right when he needs it. It was just so comforting. Like, he's here. Don't worry, I'm here. So it's gonna be really special for us to see this movie in theaters, because although we did see Terminator Salvation together in theaters in 2009, we didn't see Genesis in theaters. I believe that was a rental. We streamed it or something. We didn't see that in theaters from what I remember. This next one, Dark Fate, that comes out November of 19, November.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be the first movie that we see in theaters as parents. And that's going to be super special for us. And what's even more special, and I hope that this has the kind of success that it deserves, but hopefully this reinvigorates and revitalizes the Terminator franchise, and it brings about a new, renewed interest in this franchise with the toys and everything. I mean, we get lost at all the material stuff, but I just hope that the younger generation really appreciates it and that they go back and watch these earlier movies, because they were so special to us and they made such an impact. I mean, we're 34 going on 35 and we're in a basement and we're talking about this movie like it's yesterday, and we remember it, and we've seen it recently, but it's always with us. With the success of this movie is that they will keep making more movies that are hopefully just as good, or at least watchable. And the next one that we see years down the line, if it's 5 or 6 years maybe, we will bring our children to that one.
Yeah, that was perfectly said. Ditto.
Let's play a game. Who could name that movie that he just quoted with that one word? Ditto. Next episode.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for supporting Nurgent Care. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, all the social media stuff.
Thumbs up.